The alien ship hovered over New York City, its smooth silver surface reflecting the morning sunlight. It had appeared 3 days ago, and after initial panic, people had settled into an uneasy calm. The world's leaders had gathered at the United Nations headquarters, awaiting the arrival of the first official alien delegation in human history. Commander Jack Harris stood at attention behind the American delegation, his military uniform crisp and his expression neutral. As head of Earth's newly formed defense fleet, he was there as security, not as a diplomat. That was fine with him. Jack had never been good with words. The chamber fell silent as the doors opened. 5 aliens entered, their tall, slender bodies moving with fluid grace. Their skin had a bluish tint and their eyes were large and completely black. The lead alien wore an elaborate collar that seemed to shimmer with internal light. Delegates of Earth. The alien spoke in perfect English, its voice coming from a small device at its throat. I am Ambassador Kepler of the Arcturus Coalition, representing the United Species of the Galactic Confederation. We welcome humanity to the interstellar community. President Allison Wright stepped forward. She was a small woman with iron-gray hair and the sharp eyes of someone who had fought hard for her position. Ambassador Kepler, Earth welcomes you and thanks the Galactic Confederation for this historic meeting. The alien bowed slightly. We have observed your civilization for many cycles. Your development has been interesting, uneven, but with potential. The Confederation has prepared standard integration protocols for emerging species such as yours. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing complex charts and alien text that shifted into English. These terms will guide Earth's integration over the next 200 years. During this time, your technological development will be supervised, your expansion limited to this solar system, and your resources cataloged for fair distribution among member species. Jack felt his jaw tighten. The alien spoke pleasantly enough, but the terms sounded like a gentle form of subjugation. He glanced at Admiral Susan Coleman, his direct superior, who sat with the Joint Chiefs. Her face revealed nothing, but he caught the slight narrowing of her eyes. Kepler continued, Once your species has demonstrated proper adherence to Confederation principles, you will be granted limited colonial rights and representation in the Lesser Council. As diplomats around the room scribbled notes and whispered to each other, Jack felt his pocket vibrate. He discreetly checked his secure device. A message from Fleet Intelligence flashed on the screen, marked urgent. He opened it and felt his blood run cold. The message contained satellite images from the outer solar system. Unknown structures had been detected on several Kuiper Belt objects. They hadn't been there 6 months ago. The analysis was conclusive. Alien outposts, hidden from Earth's detection until now, and they matched the design signatures of Arcturian technology. Jack looked up at the alien ambassador, still smoothly explaining the benefits of Confederation membership. His words now seemed hollow. These aliens had established military positions in Earth's solar system before even making contact. Jack hesitated only briefly before stepping forward. This wasn't diplomatic protocol, but neither was building secret bases in someone else's backyard. Ambassador Kepler, Jack said, his voice cutting through the chamber. All eyes turned to him. Perhaps you could explain why the Arcturus Coalition has established military outposts in our Kuiper Belt without Earth's knowledge or permission. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. President Wright turned to Jack with a mixture of surprise and anger. The alien's large black eyes blinked slowly. Commander, this is hardly the forum for such accusations, Kepler said, his voice still calm. Any Confederation presence in your system would be for observational purposes only, as permitted under first contact protocols. Jack held up his device, projecting the intelligence images onto the large screen behind the delegates. These are not observation posts, Ambassador. These are weapons platforms and communication arrays. Standard Arcturian military design. My analysts confirmed it by comparing them to your ships in orbit. A tall, insect-like alien behind Kepler chittered something in a language Jack couldn't understand. Kepler responded sharply before turning back to the human assembly. These installations were placed as precautionary measures, following standard Confederation security protocols. They pose no threat to Earth. Admiral Coleman stood up. Precautionary. Measures should be transparent, Ambassador. Secret military installations are acts of aggression where I come from. Another alien stepped forward. This one had green, scale-like skin and spoke with a higher-pitched voice. This discussion violates diplomatic procedure. Such security concerns should be addressed through proper channels after formal integration begins. Jack looked at President Wright, wondering if he had overstepped, but the President's expression had hardened. I believe Commander Harris raises a valid point, Wright said. We cannot discuss integration while discovering that integration has apparently already begun without our consent. The alien delegation conferred quietly among themselves. In the back of the chamber, Jack noticed several other aliens, observers, from different Confederation species, watching with what looked like interest, maybe even approval. This matter will be referred to the Confederation Security Council, Kepler finally said. In the meantime, we request that Earth take no action regarding these installations until proper diplomatic channels have reviewed the situation. Jack caught Admiral Coleman's eye. She gave him a nearly imperceptible nod. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Jack said. As of 0600 this morning, Earth Defense Fleet vessels have been deployed to each of these locations. They will remain there to ensure these observation posts observe and nothing more. The chamber exploded with noise. The alien delegation appeared shocked. Clearly they weren't used to species who acted without permission. This is unprecedented, the scaled alien exclaimed. Newly contacted species cannot deploy military assets against Confederation installations. President Wright stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. Ambassador Kepler, Earth, appreciates the Confederation's interest in our development. However, we will not begin this relationship from a position of disadvantage. The defense of our solar system is non-negotiable. Your actions risk serious consequences, Kepler warned. The Confederation has protocols for species that display aggressive tendencies. Admiral Coleman laughed, the sound sharp in the tense room. With respect, Ambassador, establishing secret military bases in our system before saying hello seems pretty aggressive to us. Jack watched as the alien delegation huddled together, clearly unprepared for this response. From their reactions, he guessed most newly discovered species were too awed by interstellar civilization to push back against the Confederation's terms. We will need to consult with the High Council, Kepler finally said. This situation is unusual. Take all the time you need, President Wright replied coolly. In the meantime, Earth will continue to secure its own borders. As the alien delegation withdrew in obvious disarray, Jack caught sight of one of the observer aliens in the back. The creature, humanoid but with 4 arms and copper-colored skin, was making a gesture that looked surprisingly like a thumbs up. Admiral Coleman approached Jack as the room dissolved into dozens of urgent conversations. Well, Commander Harris, she said quietly, I think you just changed the agenda for today's meeting, and possibly humanity's place in the galaxy. I don't think they're used to species that don't follow their script, Jack replied. Coleman nodded. The question is, what happens now that we've torn up their script? Jack looked toward the doors where the alien delegation had disappeared. I guess we're about to find out. 6 months had passed since the tense first meeting with the Galactic Confederation. Earth had changed in that time. The knowledge that humanity was not alone in the universe had unified countries in ways no one expected. Old enemies found common ground in the face of this new reality. Lisa Carter walked through her experimental greenhouse on the outskirts of Houston, checking readings on her tablet. At 34, she had already become one of Earth's leading agricultural scientists. Now her work had taken on new importance. The plants around her were not from Earth. They were alien species that could grow in environments humans would find impossible to survive in. Lisa had been working with these samples for months, since the Confederation had reluctantly shared some basic biological data. How are they doing today? Asked her assistant Paul. Lisa smiled. Better than expected. The nitrogen cycle adaptations are holding. I think we've cracked it. What she didn't say out loud was what this meant. The Carter terraforming method, as people had started calling it. could speed up the process of making other worlds habitable by decades, maybe centuries. Instead of the 1,000 years that conventional methods would take, her approach might reduce that to less than 50 years. According to the Confederation's rules, Earth should not have this technology for at least another 100 years. But Lisa had figured it out anyway. Her phone buzzed. A message from the Defense Fleet appeared. Meeting today. Transport arriving in 30 minutes. 2 hours later, Lisa sat in a secure room beneath the Pentagon. Commander Jack Harris nodded to her as she entered. He had become something of a hero since exposing the Arcturian outposts. Beside him sat Admiral Susan Coleman and several other military and political leaders Lisa didn't recognize. At the head of the table was Ambassador Daniel Scott, Earth's official representative to the Confederation. He looked tired. "Thank you for coming, Dr. Carter," Scott said. "I've been briefed on your breakthrough. The timing couldn't be better." He touched a control, and a holographic star map appeared above the table. "The Confederation is sending High Counselor Zix Varen to Earth next week. They're not happy with us. Our actions in the Kuiper Belt violated about 50 of their protocols. But more importantly, we've been making friends." The map highlighted several nearby star systems in blue. These systems have reached out to us, privately. They're technically Confederation members, but they're treated as second-class citizens. When they heard how we stood up to the Arcturus Coalition, they saw an opportunity. Admiral Coleman spoke next. "The Confederation works on a simple principle, Dr. Carter. The strong make the rules and the weak follow them. For centuries, they've controlled which species gets access to what technology and when. Your terraforming breakthrough changes everything." Lisa felt a weight settle on her shoulders. "You want to share my research with these other systems?" Scott nodded. "Against direct Confederation orders, yes." Jack Harris leaned forward. "The Confederation has scheduled Earth for colonial rights in 200 years, 2 centuries before we're mature enough to start settling other star systems. Meanwhile, the founding species have hundreds of colonies each." Lisa looked at the star app. "These systems, they want to colonize too?" "They want freedom," Admiral Coleman said simply. "Freedom from being told when they can grow, where they can go, what they can build. Just like we do." Ambassador Scott stood up. "Tomorrow I'm meeting with High Counselor Zix Varen. The Confederation expects me to apologize for our aggressive actions and accept their integration timeline." He smiled thinly. "They're going to be disappointed." The next day, the meeting room at the United Nations was filled to capacity. News cameras broadcast worldwide as a tall, gray-skinned alien with elaborate silver markings entered, flanked by representatives from a dozen different species. High Counselor Zix Varen moved with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. "Ambassador Scott," the alien said, its voice deep and resonant through its translator. "The High Council has reviewed the unfortunate events of first contact. We understand that misunderstandings can occur between cultures. The Arcturus Coalition has agreed to withdraw their security installations as a show of good faith." Scott nodded politely. "The Confederation's cooperation is appreciated, High Counselor. Now we must discuss Earth's integration properly," Zix Varen continued. "I have brought the standard protocols for your review. The timeline of 200 years until colonial status is generous, given humanity's current development level." The alien gestured, and an aide brought forward a device that projected complicated documents into the air. "Once you have signed the integration agreements, Earth will begin receiving carefully measured technological assistance. Your military activities will be limited to this solar system, and all interstellar communications will be routed through Confederation channels. This is the path all civilized species follow." The room was silent. Everyone waited for Scott's response. He stood slowly. "High Counselor, Earth appreciates the Confederation's offer. However, we have prepared our own proposal." Murmurs rippled through the alien delegation. This clearly wasn't in the script. Scott touched a control, and the star map from the Pentagon appeared. "Earth hereby declares what we call the Solar Monroe Doctrine. Any star system within 15 light-years of Sol is recognized as being within humanity's sphere of influence. The alien delegation erupted in protest. Zix-Varon's silver markings seemed to pulse with agitation. This is not how integration works, Ambassador. No newly contacted species can claim territory beyond their home system, Scott continued calmly. We are not claiming these systems, High Counselor. We are forming mutual defense pacts with them. And yes, I said forming, not proposing. He highlighted 3 systems on the map. The governments of Proxima Centauri, Tau Ceti, and 82 Eridani have already signed these agreements. One of the alien delegates, a small purple-skinned being, whispered urgently to Zix-Varon, who looked increasingly alarmed. This is a violation of Confederation law, Zix-Varon said, voice rising. Those systems have no authority to form independent pacts. Perhaps your laws need updating, Scott replied. Because in addition to these defense agreements, we are also sharing with our allies Dr. Lisa Carter's new terraforming methods, which will allow colonization of marginal worlds in decades, rather than millennia. The room fell completely silent. Even the human observers seemed shocked by this announcement. You cannot do this, Zix-Varon said, but the certainty had left the alien's voice. Technology sharing is strictly regulated. By whom? Scott asked. By the founding species who already have what they want. Earth recognizes no such restrictions. Jack Harris, watching from the side of the room, noticed something interesting. While most of the alien delegation seemed outraged, a few of the smaller species representatives were watching with what looked like growing hope. The Confederation has maintained peace for thousands of years through careful management of expansion and technology, Zix-Varon argued. What you propose is chaos. What we propose is freedom, Scott countered. And we've discovered that quite a few of your member species have been waiting a very long time for someone to say that out loud. Captain Frank Miller stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Defiant, watching the stars through the main view screen. At 42, Frank had spent most of his adult life in the Navy before transferring to the newly formed Space Fleet. Now he commanded one of Earth's most advanced ships, currently hovering at the edge of the Alpha Centauri system. Status report, Frank said to his first officer, Linda Barnes. The Vegan blockade ships are still in position around Centauri Prime, Linda replied. Their energy signatures match the profiles we were given. 7 ships, all military class. Frank nodded. In the 3 months since Ambassador Scott's declaration of the Solar Monroe Doctrine, tensions had escalated rapidly. The Vega Imperium, one of the most powerful members of the Confederation, had responded by placing economic sanctions on Earth and its new allies. When that didn't work, they moved to direct action, blockading the Centauri system to protect Confederation interests. What they really wanted was to make an example of Earth's closest ally. Frank's comm unit beeped. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. The screen changed to show Admiral Susan Coleman. Her expression was grim, but determined. Captain Miller, we've received evidence from Centauri colonists. The Vegans aren't just blockading the system. They've landed troops on the 3rd planet and are beginning to round up government officials. Frank felt his jaw tighten. Rules of engagement, Admiral? Humanitarian intervention, Coleman replied. You are authorized to remove the Vegan presence from the Centauri system by whatever means necessary. The Defiant won't be alone. The Independence and the Liberty are already en route, but you're closest. Understood, Admiral. We'll get it done. The screen went dark. Frank turned to his bridge crew. Battle stations, Linda informed the Vegan commander that they have 1 hour to withdraw from Centauri space. And if they refuse, sir? Frank's expression hardened. Then we show them that humans don't make empty threats. 3 days later, in a laboratory on Mars, Dr. Karen Rodriguez was working late. A small woman with intense brown eyes, Karen had been leading a joint research project with scientists from the Pleiades Compact, one of the smaller Confederation member groups that had reached out to Earth after the Monroe Doctrine was announced. The energy dispersion is still too wide, said Zintel, her Pleiadian colleague. The alien's delicate silver-skinned hands moved over the control panel. If we narrow the field, the power requirements become impossible. Karen rubbed her tired eyes. They had been working on shield technology for months. The current Confederation, Defensive systems were effective but required enormous power generation. If they could develop something more efficient, it would change the balance of power significantly. What if we try a different approach? Karen suggested. Instead of trying to block energy weapons directly, what if we create a field that bends the energy around the protected object? And Zintel's large eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of excitement. Like a gravitational lens, but for weapon energy? The alien's fingers danced over the controls, running simulations. Yes, this could work. Karen's communication device chimed. It was a secure channel from Earth Command. She answered and saw President Wright's face. Dr. Rodriguez, the president said without preamble. Captain Miller has engaged Vegan forces at Alpha Centauri. The situation is escalating faster than we anticipated. How close are you to a breakthrough on the shield technology? Karen glanced at Zintel, who nodded enthusiastically. We might have something very soon, Madam President. Maybe days instead of weeks. Good, because we're going to need it. The Vegan. Imperium has just called for a Confederation peacekeeping force to deal with what they're calling human aggression. As the call ended, Karen turned to Zintel. We need to work faster. If we succeed, the alien said quietly, my people want this technology. The Vega Imperium has been using their military advantage to control the Pleiades for generations. Karen surprised herself with her answer. If we succeed, this technology goes to anyone who needs protection. That's the human way. A week later, the Galactic Security Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from the 12 most powerful species sat around a massive circular table on the neutral space station that served as Confederation headquarters. High Counselor Zix Varon called the meeting to order. We face an unprecedented crisis. The human actions in the Centauri system have violated our most sacred principles of non-interference. The Vegan representative, a tall, ridge-headed being named Kurvosh, stood. The humans must be stopped immediately. Their ships defeated our blockade fleet and are now supporting a rebel government on Centauri Prime. They claim to have found evidence of our mistreatment of the colonists, but these are lies. A quiet voice spoke from the observation gallery. We have proof that is not the case. All eyes turned to Ambassador Scott, who stood calmly beside representatives from 7 different systems. Humans have no place in this council session, Kurvosh snapped. They are not members of the Security Council. We are here as observers, Scott replied, and to announce that as of today, the systems of Proxima Centauri, Tau Ceti, 82 Eridani, Procyon, Wolf 359, Sirius, and Epsilon Indi have declared independence from Confederation control. The council chamber erupted in shouts and protests. Zix Varon banged a ceremonial staff for order. This is impossible. These systems have been Confederation territories for centuries. Scott stepped forward. They were never territories. They were colonies of their own people, and now they choose to govern themselves. With human protection, no doubt, Kurvosh sneered. Yes, Scott said simply. With human protection. The Vegan representative's ridge darkened with anger. The Confederation will not allow this. Our combined fleets will restore order. Scott smiled slightly. You can try, but you should know that each of these systems now has Dr. Karen Rodriguez's new shield technology. Your weapons will be ineffective. A murmur ran through the chamber. Many of the council members exchanged worried looks. And before you decide to act, Scott continued, I should mention that 17 more systems have contacted Earth about similar arrangements. It seems many of your satisfied member worlds have been waiting for an opportunity like this. On the Defiant, Captain Frank, Miller received a transmission from one of the newly liberated Centauri colonies. It showed hundreds of colonists celebrating in the streets, waving both Centauri and Earth flags. Similar scenes were playing out across the 7 systems that had declared independence. Frank turned to Linda. Did you ever think we'd become revolutionaries, just by refusing to follow someone else's rules? Linda shook her head. The Confederation doesn't understand humans very well, do they? They gave us a 200-year integration timeline, but couldn't wait a few weeks for us to read the fine print. Their mistake, Frank replied, watching the celebrations. And from the looks of it, They've been making that same mistake with a lot of species for a very long time. Back on Earth, President Wright met with her Security Council. The mood was tense but determined. The Confederation has issued an ultimatum, she told the assembled leaders. Either we withdraw our protection from the independent systems and accept their original integration terms, or they will consider us in a state of war with the Confederation. Admiral Coleman laughed shortly. They already blockaded our allies and tried to arrest their governments. What do they think we've been in already? What's our response, Madam President? Ambassador Scott asked. Wright's expression was resolute. We stand firm. Earth didn't start this fight, but we're certainly not going to back down from it. And if they attack? Someone asked. Admiral Coleman answered. Then they'll learn another lesson about humans. We don't just break the rules when they're unjust. We fight for what we believe in. Eric Winters sat at his workstation in the underground complex beneath Seattle, his fingers flying over the keyboard. At 29, Eric had been one of Earth's top communications specialists before first contact. Now he was part of a secret project that might change the galaxy forever. How's the encryption holding? Asked Nicole Grant, sliding into the chair beside him. Nicole was a software engineer whose work on quantum algorithms had caught the attention of Earth Defense. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes showed the strain of working for 3 days straight. It's solid, Eric replied, glancing at the multiple screens displaying data streams. The Confederation systems can't crack it. They keep trying to jam our transmissions, but the frequency-hopping protocols adapt faster than they can track. Nicole nodded, taking a sip from her coffee mug. The Lighthouse protocol is ready for full deployment then. All we need is the go-ahead. They both looked across the room where Admiral Susan Coleman was engaged in a heated discussion with several civilian officials. For the past month, the Confederation had tried to isolate Earth and its allies by cutting off access to the official interstellar communication network. They had expected this to bring the rebellious systems to their knees. Instead, humanity had done what it always did when faced with a challenge: innovate. Admiral Coleman finally walked over to Eric and Nicole's station. President Wright has given the authorization. Deploy Lighthouse, full spectrum, all allied systems. Eric took a deep breath. Yes, ma'am. He entered a series of commands, then pressed his palm against a scanner for final verification. Across the room, a large display showed a map of nearby space. One by one, points of light began to appear, spreading outward from Earth like ripples in a pond. Lighthouse beacons activating, Eric reported. Alpha Centauri online. Tau Ceti online. Sirius online. The lights continued to spread, moving beyond Earth's immediate allies to systems deeper in Confederation territory. What's happening there? Coleman asked, pointing to systems lighting up well beyond the declared independent systems. Nicole smiled. Some of our allies have friends of their own. They've been secretly installing our transmitters for weeks. Within an hour, over 60 star systems had connected to the Lighthouse network, a completely independent communication system that bypassed Confederation control entirely. For the first time in centuries, member species could talk to each other, without their conversations being monitored, censored, or recorded by the ruling powers. Now for Phase 2, Admiral Coleman said grimly. Release the archives. In the Confederation capital on the neutral space station, High Counselor Zix Varen was in the middle of a strategy session with representatives from the founding species when an aide rushed in, clearly distressed. High Counselor, we have a serious security breach. Someone has accessed the sealed archives. Zix Varen stood abruptly. Impossible. Those records are protected by the highest encryption. They weren't broken into, the aide said. They were opened using valid authorization codes from within our own systems. Before Zix Varen could respond, every screen in the room lit up with the same message. The truth, freely available to all species of the galaxy. Below the message was a catalog of classified Confederation documents stretching back thousands of years. Shut it down immediately, Zix Varen ordered. We can't, the aide said helplessly. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, even through the emergency channels, and it's not coming from one source. It's coming from thousands of transmitters, spread across multiple systems. The Vegan representative Kurvosh hissed in anger. The humans are behind this. It must be their doing. Zixvaran moved to a terminal and quickly searched through the exposed archives, looking for damage control options. What the High Counselor found instead sent a chill through the room. The documents revealed the ugly truth beneath the Confederation's benevolent facade. Internal directives showed how the founding species had deliberately suppressed technological development in newer member worlds. Secret agreements detailed how resources from colony planets were systematically diverted to enrich the founding worlds. Most damning of all were the minutes from Security Council meetings where the senior members openly discussed maintaining their power by keeping younger species dependent on them. This cannot get out, Kurvosh said, panic evident in the Vegan's voice. If our subject worlds see these records. But it was already too late. Reports were coming in from across Confederation space of growing unrest as citizens accessed the leaked information. On dozens of worlds, people were gathering in the streets demanding answers from their representatives. On board the Confederation flagship Eternal Justice, Admiral Grazvik of the Vegan military paced the command deck. The vessel was at the U, head of a peacekeeping fleet sent to restore order in the rebelling systems. Communication status, Grazvik demanded. Still compromised, Admiral, replied the communications officer. We're receiving the human transmissions on all channels. The crew, they're viewing the leaked archives. Grazvik slammed a fist on the nearest console. Block all non-essential communications. This ship will maintain discipline. Sir, another officer spoke up hesitantly. We're receiving reports of unrest on the support vessels. Some crews are refusing orders to proceed to the human territories. The Admiral turned in disbelief. Refusing orders? That's mutiny. Yes, sir, the officer replied. But the leaked documents show that the High Command knew the humans were defending Centauri colonists against legitimate abuses. Many crew members have family on those colony worlds. Grazvik was about to respond when the ship's main screen activated without command. A human face appeared, a woman with short gray hair and the insignia of the Earth government. This is President Allison Wright of Earth, broadcasting to all Confederation military vessels. We understand that many of you are only now learning the truth about the systems you serve. We ask you to consider your actions carefully. No soldier should be forced to fight for a cause they know is unjust. Before Grazvik could order the transmission cut, several crew members on the bridge stood up from their stations. What are you doing? The Admiral demanded. We will not fire on innocent people, said the weapons officer, a young Vegan from a colony world. Not for a lie. Back on Earth in the Senate chamber, Ambassador Daniel Scott addressed a gathering of representatives from 23 species. Some attended in person, others via secure holographic links on the Lighthouse network. For too long, the Confederation has maintained control through secrecy and manipulation, Scott said. They divided us, kept us from communicating freely, and made each species believe they were alone in their struggles. Humanity refused to play by those rules from the beginning, and now we offer you the same choice. A representative from Proxima Centauri stood. The Confederation fleet sent to pacify us has stood down. 3 of their capital ships have declared for the independence movement. Similar reports came in from other systems. The carefully constructed hierarchy of the Confederation was collapsing not through military defeat, but through the simple power of information freely shared. In the Seattle bunker, Eric watched the reports coming in on the Lighthouse network with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. We didn't beat them with better weapons, he said to Nicole. We beat them with better communication. Nicole nodded, looking at the map where more and more systems were lighting up as they joined the network. Turns out the most dangerous human trait wasn't our aggression or our technology. It was our stubborn insistence on telling the truth, even when the rules say we shouldn't. Admiral Coleman, overhearing them, laughed. That, and our complete inability to wait patiently in line, when we know the line shouldn't exist in the first place. The red plains of Mars stretched out below the massive dome of the conference center. 1 year had passed since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Confederation, and the solar system had changed beyond recognition. Ships from hundreds, of alien worlds filled the orbital lanes around Mars, their designs as varied as the species that built them. Admiral Peter Hayes stood at the window, watching the constant flow of shuttle traffic. At 52, with steel-gray hair and the weathered face of a career military man, Peter had never expected to find himself in the role of diplomat. Yet here he was, Earth's representative to the largest gathering of alien species in known history. "Quite a view, isn't it?" said a voice behind him. Peter turned to see President Allison Wright approaching. Her year in office had been the most challenging in human history, yet she seemed energized rather than exhausted. 300 different species, Peter said, shaking his head in wonder, all here because humans couldn't follow simple instructions. Wright smiled. "Sometimes the instructions need to be questioned." She glanced at her watch. "It's time. They're ready for you in the main chamber." The Mars Conference Hall could seat 10,000 beings of various sizes and environmental needs. Today it was filled to capacity. Some delegates required special atmosphere bubbles, others floated in tanks of liquid, but all had come for the same purpose, to establish a new framework for interstellar relations. As Peter walked onto the central platform, the noise of thousands of conversations translated through various devices gradually quieted. He looked out at the assembled representatives and felt the weight of the moment. "1 year ago," Peter began, his voice carried by translators to every delegate, "Earth learned we were not alone in the universe. We were told there were rules, protocols established over thousands of years that all civilized species must follow." He paused, letting his gaze move across the gathering. "We were told to wait our turn, to accept limitations on our growth, our technology, and our connections with other worlds. We were presented with a system that claimed to maintain peace through careful management." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many of the delegates nodded in recognition. Humanity chose a different path, not because we believed ourselves superior or exceptional, but because we recognized something fundamental. A system that requires control to maintain peace isn't really peaceful at all. On a raised platform to one side, Peter could see the former Confederation leadership watching. High Counselor Zix Varen's expression was unreadable, but the tension in the alien's posture was evident. Beside Zix Varen sat representatives from the other founding species, their power greatly diminished since the collapse of their authority. "Today, we gather not to create a new version of the old system," Peter continued. "We are here to establish something fundamentally different, the Interstellar Mutual Defense Pact." He gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber, showing the principles of the new agreement. No arbitrary waiting periods for technology sharing. No artificial limitations on expansion. No central authority dictating which species can communicate with whom. Instead, a simple framework for cooperation, mutual aid, and conflict resolution. As Peter outlined the details of the pact, he noticed something unexpected. While many of the former Confederation bureaucrats looked dismayed at the streamlined system being proposed, others were paying close attention, taking notes, even nodding in approval. The most fundamental principle of this new pact, Peter emphasized, is that every member world maintains its sovereignty. Participation in joint projects is always voluntary. The only mandatory element is the commitment to defend any member world under attack. When Peter finished his presentation, the chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds, the equivalent of applause from hundreds of different species. Representatives began to line up at the speaking platforms to offer their support, suggestions, or concerns. As the discussion continued, Peter stepped down from the main stage. Lisa Carter, the agricultural scientist whose terraforming breakthrough had helped catalyze these events, approached him. "They're actually working together," she said with a note of wonder in her voice. "After centuries of being kept apart, they're sharing ideas directly." Peter nodded. "Turns out most species don't actually want to conquer each other. They just want to live and grow without artificial constraints." A commotion near the main entrance drew their attention. The crowd was parting, to make way for new arrivals. Tall, luminous beings with forms that seemed to shift between solid and energy. "The elder races," Lisa whispered. These mysterious species were said to be the original patrons of the Confederation, ancient civilizations that had largely withdrawn from galactic affairs thousands of years ago. Their appearance at the Mars conference sent a wave of hushed conversation through the chamber. The lead elder, a being of swirling golden energy contained within a vaguely humanoid form, approached Peter and Lisa. When it spoke, the voice seemed to bypass their translators and appeared directly in their minds. "We have observed your species since your first steps into space," the elder said. "Many believed your directness and unwillingness to follow established protocols would lead to chaos and war." Peter stood straighter. "And what do you believe?" The elder's form shifted, patterns of light suggesting what might have been amusement. "We believe we were wrong. In 1 year, your species has accomplished more positive change than the Confederation achieved in centuries of careful management." Lisa looked confused. "If you saw problems with the Confederation system, why didn't you intervene?" "It was not our place to dictate how younger species should organize themselves," the elder replied. "And perhaps we had grown too accustomed to slow, careful change." The elder turned to survey the chamber where discussions and negotiations continued in hundreds of small groups. "What you have created here is not chaos as many feared. It is vibrant, direct problem-solving. You showed us all that the diplomatic game, the one humanity refused to play, had always been rigged in favor of those who created the rules." On the other side of the chamber, Commander Jack Harris, the man whose actions during first contact had set these events in motion, was speaking with representatives from several former Confederation worlds. His straightforward approach to their questions about Earth's defense strategies was drawing appreciative responses. "We never wanted to conquer the galaxy," Peter told the elder. "We just wanted the freedom to find our own path. And in claiming that freedom for yourselves, you offered it to others who had forgotten such freedom was possible," the elder said. "That is a rare gift." As the Mars conference continued into its second week, the new framework took shape. Former enemies found common ground. Species that had been deliberately kept apart by Confederation policies discovered shared interests and complementary abilities. The remaining Confederation loyalists, seeing the tide of history turning against them, gradually began to participate in the new system. Some did so reluctantly, others with growing enthusiasm as they realized the benefits of direct cooperation. On the final day, as representatives from 300 worlds signed the Interstellar Mutual Defense Pact, President Wright stood beside Peter on the observation deck. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you exposed those Arcturian outposts a year ago?" she asked. Peter shook his head. "Never. I just knew something wasn't right about being told to sit quietly while aliens built military bases in our backyard." Wright smiled. "A very human reaction. And it turns out perhaps that's exactly what the galaxy needed. Someone willing to flip over the table when the game wasn't fair." Below them, the new Interstellar Council was already beginning its work, addressing issues directly that would have taken years of bureaucratic delay under the old system. Earth was just one voice among many now, but it was a voice that had changed the galaxy simply by refusing to follow the rules of a game it never agreed to play.